The Toronto Raptors' next move has been revealed, as this team made a shocking decision this morning, parting ways with Masai Ujiri, who's been leading this organization for over a decade now at this point, and CEO of MLSE, the ownership group of the Toronto Raptors, came out and spoke about the firing of Masai Ujiri, broke down why it ended up happening, and gave some answers, gave some non-answers, but he definitely revealed a few things, including the Toronto Raptors' next move. So we're going to break down everything that was said in this press conference from Keith Pelley, what it means for the Toronto Raptors going forward, and frankly, what takeaways we now have in this whole situation, and whether or not we should be worried. And we have a lot of stuff to discuss, to make sure to stay to the end because there is a lot of information to dive into. But folks, if you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We're building up this community here now. I set this screenshot this morning. Videos have been coming too fast. I have an update. I think we're over 38,200 subscribers. So we want to keep building, marching towards our mission of 40,000 subscribers. So if you want to join the community and not miss a single thing with this Toronto Raptors team, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. But let's jump into it because, of course, this was a crazy day. And Keith Pelley, I appreciate the fact that he didn't make us wait. He came out the day of and announced his press conference and was ready to go to face the heat and answer questions on the situation. So let's break it down. Some of his quotes. Firstly, he said, "We are now going to turn attention to finding a new team president. With the Raptors being in the middle of a rebuild, we felt we needed to bring in a new president. And as a result, we will begin that search immediately." So the first move next in order for the Toronto Raptors, beyond the moves that are coming, which we'll discuss, is finding a new team president. Now, we knew the Raptors were in their search in our most recent video about they are looking to, have an actual president for this team. Masai Ujiri was fired and is getting replaced. It's not like, oh, we're going to have our GM there and no team president. The same way when Shanahan was fired from the Toronto Maple Leafs and then Brad Treliving ended up staying as that guy. So basically, the Raptors are going in a different direction because they are in the middle of a rebuild, according to Keith Pelley. Now, I don't really get that logic. I don't understand, hey, you need some more guidance, I guess, during a rebuild. I feel like a team president making big decisions while you're actually winning is probably just as important, but that's the logic MLSE is throwing out there, and that's what they're diving into, and they felt the need to part ways with Masai Ujiri because of it. So there's that, and there's one quote right now that has some people pretty fired up in terms of who's going to be the next guy to replace Masai Ujiri. And it's the back half of this quote I just showed here right now. Basically, the person coming in will have massive shoes to fill. So they will need to be a prominent, successful business leader. Now, this is a quote, this is a term, this is a verbiage that he was using throughout this entire press conference. Business leader. And he talked about how they're partnering with CAA, the agency that, is the agents for a lot of basketball players, and I guess a lot of prominent business people and things like that. But they're working in combination with CAA to find the next president of basketball operations for this team. And when you have these, I run a business and stuff, nothing like MLSE or anything like that, but you have your quotes, you have your taglines, you have all that stuff. And essentially the tagline that he kept saying throughout this press conference, which has people fired up, is prominent, successful business leader. Now, you look at that as a dude that is heading basketball operations. You look at that description. While, yes, you want successful people, and I respect that he's looking for the cream of the crop, and, it's business, successful, and all this type of stuff. That doesn't scream to me the perfect criteria for a president of basketball operations. It's a great title for someone trying to increase merchandise sales and, make more money for shareholders and all that stuff and bring more business opportunities for MLSE. Raptors fans don't care about that. We want basketball, we want quality basketball out on the court. That's the only thing that hits us as the end consumer, as, the head of president of basketball operations. So that has a lot of people concerned about the selection process, how they're looking into things and stuff like that, especially when you're getting rid of a guy that lived, breathed, soaked up everything basketball, whether it was in North America, Africa, all across the world. He was a scout at heart, and just a jarring jump in terms of verbiage. Now, Keith Pelley did address this later, so it's not like it's the only thing he said, and he did talk about the basketball side, but that is a quote that is going around that has some people fired up. But there is a lot more to discuss in this video. So the reason for the move from Masai Ujiri said, the situation we currently are in basketball operations, as I talked about stability with the roster, the front office, and coaching staff, that allowed us to make a decision to move forward. So essentially, he kept saying, which doesn't make sense, right? The specifics as to why you're parting ways from Masai Ujiri. Everything else is really good and stable, so now we can just fire him, right? That's a non-answer. That's an answer as to, hey, this is the timeline why we did it now, but that's not the reason as to why you actually fired him. But that's the kind of, double speak we're getting out there from these execs, but essentially revealed that everything else is stable. And that's another way to communicate to, people out there, and that Bobby Webster is staying, that Darko Rajaković is staying. It's not like a full tilt cleaning house here now at this point. So that is one thing we can certainly look at. But speaking on Bobby Webster, the back half of this quote, and this is going to be a long video, there's a lot of stuff to dive into, but Bobby will be a candidate. We've already talked about that. So he will be interviewed, and I think the president of a basketball so that's the first quote. Bobby Webster will be interviewed for the president of basketball operations for this Toronto Raptors team. Now, this is exactly what I want to hear. I'll dive into my analysis later in this video in terms of different quotes and different stuff, why I'm a little bit worried Bobby Webster's not going to get a fair shake at the president of basketball operations. But if we have a pick, if we have a decision, if we have an opportunity to take anyone in a vacuum and plug them in for president of basketball operations, my number one pick would probably be Bob Myers, who managed and ran the Golden State Warriors and built that team, but he doesn't have any indications of wanting to leave his job as a, ESPN color commentator. He was doing the halftime shows and stuff during the NBA Finals. The Suns were interested in him, and he didn't really want to go there, so I don't imagine he'd want to join this Raptors team. But outside of Bob Myers, Bobby Webster is the guy that I would have most interest in bringing in. Now, a few months ago, Pat Riley, there was an odds that we would be the next team Pat Riley is president of basketball operations. So that was before Masai Ujiri was ousted, so that was another name, but Bobby Webster is the guy I'd like to see. But and he's going to get interviewed, which is a positive. But there's more quotes in terms of the plans on this. Essentially, because Josh Lundberg asked whether or not it would be an appealing position, and Keith Pelley came out and said, I think the president of a basketball organization is always appealing. So I don't think we have any challenges in finding a strong, prominent businessman with a depth background in basketball operations. So you hear that again. You hear that language. Strong, prominent businessman. Successful, prominent businessman. They want a big name, a big face to lead this team. That's not Masai Ujiri, which he is a strong, prominent businessman. But I digress. That's what Keith Pelley is saying there at this point. So that is a lot of quotes. And another thing on that note, like Bobby Webster, I don't know if he's a businessman. He worked in the league front office as a cap guy, but did talk about prominence. Interesting language, in terms of spending all the money with CA to find these types of people. So that's that. But we also have a lot more quotes up. Essentially, Keith Pelley came out and said, Masai and I have been chatting for the past 2 to 3 months about the future. He was told firmly about the decision at the beginning of this month. Masai is a professional, and he took it as such. This was my decision with support of the board. So that is a timeline in terms of how this worked, how this planned out with Masai Ujiri. So he knew about this. When he was given his end-of-season press conferences and stuff, he knew that his time in Toronto was up or was coming up and stuff. And we'll talk about why he ended up managing this team for the draft and all that after. But basically, so that's the timeline. We'll talk about more of that after. And Keith Pelley also kept stating, this is my decision. It wasn't Edward Rogers. He's taking all the heat off the board, and Edward Rogers specifically, which we all know as Raptors fans, Edward Rogers was the reason Masai Ujiri, I broke a video down on it last time. Money, the reports are out. The Raptors are too cheap to pay Masai Ujiri. That's why he's gone. Now, I think Masai also had part, he's an expensive contract, maybe had other endeavors and all that stuff, but the main reason Masai Ujiri is not back is because Edward Rogers did not want to pay him. The board did not want to pay him, whether it was Edward Rogers the figurehead or whatever it is. We know this. That's what the last video was essentially about. Go watch that if you want more breakdowns and details on it. And Masai Ujiri, knowing this, at his end-of-season press conference, he had a great quote about how he wants to desperately win again in Toronto. His hopes and dreams are to do it. The last time he won in Toronto, it was spoiled by that stupid security guard out there in Golden State, and he wants to feel that moment the right way this time. And it was an emotional, impactful speech, and it was from the heart. It was from the heart, and that's a sign. That's a message. That is a direct quote to Toronto Raptors fans that, hey, I want to be here. This is not me leaving. And the Raptors organization, you, Buster, Edward Rogers, made that decision. So that is something we're dealing with there. But we have more quotes. We have more stuff to dive into. As basically, this is one quote. This is another one. Basically, the discussion that Masai Ujiri and I had is obviously that was private, but the fact that he led the draft shows Masai's integrity and our trust and belief that he has always and will always have the best interest of the Toronto Raptors in mind. I can't say it many more times, but there are many factors that played a part in this decision, and the timing was right to make the change. And we believe with the stability outlined in other areas, now is the time to make that change. Now, Edward Rogers wasn't named once in this press conference by Keith Pelley. By design, from the board. He doesn't want to get more heat onto him or anything like that. This quote that I just read screams to me that even though Keith Pelley's taking the ownership of the decision and they get input from the board, but all this type of yapping stuff, the fact that Masai Ujiri was still able to lead the draft doesn't indicate to me this was a performance fire. This was a Masai Ujiri, you're trash, let's go in this direction. This was a money move, as we know this report's saying. This is a word around way to allude to this as this being the case. There is no world, zero world, where if they thought Masai Ujiri was incompetent, didn't know what he was doing, or anything like that, that he would be running the Toronto Raptors draft. Like, there's no world that would be the case. So, Masai Ujiri wanted to do this to the Raptors. He's been scouting them all year. He wanted to leave this Raptors team with some star players, with some guys that have some high upside and stuff like that there, and move in that direction. Now, I've seen some conspiracy theories, and I want to shout out my dad. I saw my dad after the draft. Now, he was not a fan of the Colin Murray-Boyles prediction. As I'm a Raptors delusional optimist, my dad can be more of a realist when it comes to the Raptors. He said, I wonder if Masai Ujiri knows he's going to get fired and just completely threw the draft at the Toronto Raptors. My dad gave that quote 2 nights ago. And what do you know? Masai Ujiri's fired, and of course, there's no world that's the case. That's not what happened here, but it was funny. It was funny. It was a funny prediction. It was a funny thing to say out there. We were joking, like, imagine he just took some random bum from D3 with the number 9 overall pick on his way out. Like, that would have been a crazy move by Masai, but I digress. The fact that this is the case shows that there must have been a solid relationship with Keith Pelley. Masai Ujiri talked about a solid relationship with Keith, but even at the end of the season too. So there was a relationship there. It's this man that didn't want to pay him. And Masai Ujiri is an expensive price tag, knows he can get more money elsewhere, so he may as well go do it if he's not going to be respected and paid the way he should be. So that's what happened along that. All of these quotes point to what we've been hearing through all these reports and everything that's coming out. So there was that, and then my other concern that came from this quote, this press conference, was basically the team president, so the next one, will be very involved in basketball operations. He will need to work closely with Bobby Webster. He will work fully on basketball operations. Keith Pelley also kind of alluded to, like, it won't be ticket sales he's working on, merchandise sales, it's nothing like that. It's basketball. That's what the president of basketball operations is going to be doing. That's concerning me in 2 ways, because I think Bobby Webster should be the president of basketball operations. That's my stance. That's my perspective. I am a big believer in Bobby Webster. And saying that the president of basketball operations needs to work with Bobby Webster indicates to me, it's like, you're not considering Bobby Webster that hard for this position. Now, I'm hopeful I'm wrong in that read. I'm not saying that's, the truth, but that's the language that's getting thrown out there. Because ideally, if you fired Masai Ujiri, you knew who that president was going to be, rather than, hey, we're going to figure this out over the next week or month or whatever the heck it is. So there's that. I don't like that. The second part of this, which is, concerning in terms of the quote, in terms of what's coming out, is there's a risk now. There's a risk that we hire someone the caliber of, like, Joe Dumars or something, and then you get trades like the Pelicans made on night 1 of the NBA draft. Like, there's that risk. There's that risk that Bobby Webster, who's been developing one of the most intelligent, up-and-coming front office executives across the entire NBA, there's potential that his mind won't align with the president, his voice will be drowned out, we lose Bobby Webster to a different team, and then we're just left with a bunch of garbage. There is that possibility. When you bring in a guy that, again, quote, you are looking for a prominent, successful business leader. There is an opportunity for someone that's strong and prominent businessman to come in. That's the language that's being used for someone that's not working on a business. They're working on basketball operations. These are two different things. Yes, you need to manage the cap. Yes, you need to do all this stuff. But the skills of being a business, there's overlapping skills, of course. But it doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with me. And these are the polished quotes that are supposed to come out and sit right with us. That's what has me fairly concerned about all these comments and things that are coming out of this nature. And we have more quotes. Essentially, the urgency is to find the right person. If that is next week, perfect. If that's in a month, that's fine too. And if it's 2 months from now, that's okay. All board members on all major decisions supply input. And at the end of the day, they look. So that's the first thing. The timeline. We don't really have a timeline of this deal. Despite knowing Masai Ujiri is going to be fired a month ago, they don't have anyone lined up. Like, what are we doing here? That doesn't make sense to me. Something is head-scratching about that decision. So there's that. And on top of it, he doubled down. Because everyone knows it's Edward Rogers who did this. He doubled down in this saying that all board members on all decisions supply input. And at the end of the day, they look for the input, direction, and strategy on where the team is going through their CEO. And that's the reason they brought me in. So I respect Keith for falling on the sword right now for MLSE. You know, it's a big thing to do, but he's getting paid a lot of money to do it. Whatever. But I don't know, man. I'm worried. If Bobby Webster becomes president of basketball operations, I have many less fears in terms of the direction, the future of this team. Still some, because I think Bobby Webster has less cachet than Masai Ujiri did when he had Larry Tannenbaum on his side out there on the MLSE board and could push around. Red Rogers that probably wants to, raise the price of hot dogs, right? Like, I don't know. That's nothing to do with Masai, but do cheap stuff like that. So that's stuff that's coming out. And also, multiple times throughout this press conference, like a good 22-minute press conference there, he said luxury tax unprovoked a ton. He was yapping about luxury tax. There's no world we break into the luxury tax now. That wasn't expected in the first place, but I don't know, man. Rogers, we got the most expensive phone bills in the world right now. We got the most expensive phone bills in the world right now here in Canada. And you can't splurge a little bit on the tax. I mean, there's other implications, so I get not wanting to be in it, but stop being cheap. Stop being cheap, Eddie Rogers. Stop being cheap. I don't know. Longer video, but there's so much stuff to dive into. There's so many videos we're going to be discussing. So I can't believe this happened. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. Yes, the best thing to start. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out.